Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. I'm very blessed. We have Joe back again. Joe, tell us about yourself.
Oh, man. Well, let's see. I was born a poor black child on these... No? The Jerk? Anyone?
Trust me. I know that one.
Okay.
But wow, what a way to start.
It's one of my favorite openings to a movie ever. My name is Joe Pitt. I serve as a national music director for a Christian radio network based out of Chicago. And good friend of... I think we're good friends. We count as good friends.
I would call you a good friend.
Awesome. So yeah, I have a good friend. His name's Craig, and you're listening to his podcast. And you invited me to share my testimony.
Yes.
Now, do you want to intro any of that, or do I just launch right into my testimony? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I'll in a second here, I'll let you start really wherever you want with that. I'll give the audience another little flashback as well. I'm going to rewind and touch back on, you said at the beginning that you work in radio. And if the audience wants to know more about that, way back in March, episode 101, March of 23, you shared a lot about what it's like working in radio and your life in radio and what that means, because people are listening to audio now and they might be listening in the car, they might be listening at home, and they want more inspirational things. They might want more uplifting things. And you do great work in your career with that. So it was really encouraging for me to hear that a while ago. So audience, I would recommend going way back. It's going to take some scrolling through the podcast archives to find it at this point. But it was super awesome. But as you said, yes, the first of the month, I love getting the opportunity to share testimonies with people. And I'm excited to sit here now with you in my wonderful living room where we also have small group.
Yeah.
And hear more about your testimony in your life and the opportunity to share it with the audience. So I'm going to let you start wherever you want with that.
Oh, man. So my testimony starts with, I was born here in Chicagoland, and to a mother who was Lutheran but converted to Roman Catholicism for my dad, who was a Roman Catholic, because you have to be Roman Catholic to get married. And they had me. I'm the oldest. And if you are listening to this podcast and you are Roman Catholic, you know how this track works. And if you're not, then let me tell you that you get baptized, which means your parents stand up and say that as an infant, they're going to raise you as a Roman Catholic, teach you the ways of the church. And then they enter you around, I want to say, first, second grade. My math's not good on this anymore. Haven't been Roman Catholic in a while. But I want to say first, second grade, you enter what's called RE is what I remember it is, religious education. And you learn the sacraments of the church. You go through things like First Communion, First Reconciliation, and then your confirmation, which is when the church recognizes you as an adult and you are now responsible for your own faith. And I actually was always probably spiritually aware. So I had an opportunity in, I want to say 5th grade, to serve as an altar server in the Catholic Church. So which meant I got there before Mass and I helped light candles. I helped set up the altar. And so it was always interesting. But the thing about being a Roman Catholic, at least where I was in my faith journey, and the people who were speaking into my spiritual formation, that really always irked me is I would always ask questions about, why do we believe this? Like, why do we believe this or X? Why do we do this? Why does the sacrament say to do that? And the response I always got was either you're too young to understand or we just believe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that we just believe works for things like gravity. I just trust gravity is going to work. And it's not until later you learn how gravity works if you really want to. Do we really know how it works? We have a formula we think works.
Right.
But when it comes to your spiritual formation, issues of the soul, the heart, things like that, the bigger questions of the universe, you want answers to, or at least a signpost of an answer.
Yes.
And I wasn't getting those. And so I followed all the way through my religious ed because my parents did give me a choice. And fun fact, when you get to confirmation, you have to pick a saint. As a Roman Catholic, you have to pick a saint that's like your saint, your patron saint. Or whatever.
Interesting.
And I picked Saint Cecilia, who is the patron saint of performers and musicians. And I had to sit through 3 meetings explaining why I picked a female saint to be my saint, my sealing saint. They're like, yeah, but you're a boy. It's like, yeah, but there's no patron saint of singers and musicians that's a dude. It's a woman. So that's what it's like. Yeah, but we would really like it if you picked a yeah. So it was a whole thing. And my parents got involved. My parents, to their credit, they were like, we just made a promise that we would see him through this. Like, we just need him to be done with it. He can have Saint Cecilia. We don't care. My big teenage rebellion, though, was to radically go away from the Roman Catholic faith. And what I mean by that was, in high school, I had a group of friends who attended a Baptist youth group on Wednesday nights, one of them, I don't know. Foam. This was peak early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, Protestant youth group. So it was Foam, Fishers of All Men. Oh, no. Our small groups were called bubble groups. Oh, yeah. No. So there's that. So my big teenage rebellion was to go to the Baptist youth group that was literally across the street from the Roman Catholic Church. Cool. So my dad, I love him to death. He to this day says that I am a Catholic, because we'll get into how I got confirmed, but it's really fun to say, like, he's like, I'm sorry, you were born a Catholic. I raised you a Catholic. I had you confirmed as a Catholic. And until the Pope excommunicates you, Joe, you are a Catholic.
Should we write a letter to the Pope?
No, please don't. I don't need to get the Pope involved. So, yeah, it is 2001. It's Halloween. And along with awful youth group names like Foam and Edge and all of them, really popular were these things called hell walks. Have you heard of them, Craig?
No, I don't.
So a hell walk is a Christian-themed haunted house. And the basic premise is you will roll up to a church and there will be a police car and there will be 2 cars that look like they collided in an accident. No. And there will be like a bike smashed on the ground, like smashed between them off to the side. And you're like, oh no, what happened here? And you line up with your youth group or your group of friends that you brought, and they will lead you into the sanctuary. And I remember this very clearly. It was comical if it wasn't for how true it probably will be at the end times, or when we all have to stand before Jesus. But that, a teenager who's not that much older than you or me will come out and talk about how, but God, I went to youth group. I volunteered in church. I did all these service projects. And it's represented by this bright white light that she's standing in. But then the white light starts to dim. No, it's like, what do you mean you did? I didn't know you. Jesus, I love you. And the light goes out. And then the rock music starts. And there's strobe lights. And other teenagers in all black costumes come and drag the teenager, who, again, is not that much older than you or me.
Oh, gosh.
Underground. And you go down to the morgue. This was a great effect for not having to sign a waiver to do this. But what they would do is you go into a morgue and they open one of the freezers. You get on one of the trays. They push you in, close the door, leave you for a second, and then you're pulled out on the other side. And then you go through an artistic representation of what this specific church pictures hell to be like. And so there's a lot of rock music, naturally, lots of bright flashing lights, there's much wailing and gnashing of teeth. And it ended with a scene where you are brought before the Prince of Darkness. And it's a dude in a tux who's wearing sunglasses, and it's a red lit room. And he's talking about, I cannot remember for the life of me what he said, but he was trying to be slimy, sleazy, and just sort of like, what a cartoonish representation of what Lucifer might be like. And then you leave that room, and there's a video that's playing on a loop, and it's the pastor of the church who says, like, hey, this is, again, what we think an artistic representation of hell would be, so we want to give you a choice. You can either escape from hell and go to heaven and go take the staircase to your right, or you can, if you were not moved by any of this and you don't really care, you can feel free to take the staircase on your left. And the staircase on your left led right to the parking lot. I looked because I was just curious. But then I went up to the right, and it's what you'd expect. A bunch of tracts. Here's a cupcake, some candy, someone to talk to you about Jesus. I remember being like scared by that a little bit from the like any good early 2000s Protestant Christian event. We really like to latch onto that adrenaline rush and get you to make a decision for Jesus without really a fully thought out, measured response. We just want to get you. And I talked to my youth pastor, and he said, well, what do you think? And it's like, yeah, I don't want to go to hell. And he's like, well, how about you? We pray the prayer. So this is fall of 2001. I go on living my life like absolutely, and nothing is different. I will say I had all of the head knowledge necessary for my realization that Jesus Christ is the only means of salvation. All made sense intellectually. I understood that. But as any true believer will tell you, the longest distance in existence is the 18 inches from your brain to your heart. It's the longest distance to cover. So it had not made its way into my heart. I went on living like nothing had really changed. I professed Jesus, but was denying him by my life. And it wasn't until winter of 2003, my dad suffered a massive hemorrhagic stroke. It should have killed him. And maybe, I don't remember if in episode 101 I talked about it at all, but as a result of my dad's going through the stroke, he is my hero. That's a whole other, we could talk for, I could give you 40 minutes on the stroke of my dad.
That would be interesting.
But suffice to say, my dad's lying in an ICU. We don't know if he's going to make it through the night. I drive home with my brother and my sister because my mom stayed in the hospital with my dad. For those in Chicagoland, at the time, the best stroke hospital was in Rockford. We were living in Elgin, so it's a 45-minute drive at the time. So we're driving back. My brother and sister are silent. I'm silent, and we try to go to bed, and I'm lying in bed. It's, I don't know what time, but I just remember going like being panicked with the thoughts of my dad might die. And if my dad dies, I'm now de facto man of the house. I'm the oldest child. I'll be expected to step up. I'll be expected to do this and do that. And now, oh my gosh, I've been saying immediately turns into, I've been saying I'm a Christian and I'm not living out the life that I claim to profess. And I remember very clearly going, all right, Jesus, if you are who you say you are, I am done. I give you this. My life is now in your hands. So which meant all the partying that I was doing at the time was done. I was like, I'm done living for myself, because you cannot claim the name of Christ and then not act like you have, like anything has changed. That is not consistent with the model of Scripture. So that was December of 2003, and I have not looked back since then.
About how old were you then?
That would have been teen.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was born in, I was 19. Yeah, I was 19. Just about to turn 20. I turned 20 that January.
Okay.
And my dad survived. So there's that. You don't have to worry about that, dear listener. My dad is actually, as of this recording, still alive. He will tell you every morning that he can wake up and put steam on the mirrors. A good day. I will say since his stroke, we have gone through hills and valleys between our faiths, because he got super back into Catholicism and practicing his faith because he believes that the Lord saved him. The Lord was not done with him yet. And so, that would be a fascinating podcast in its own right to have him tell you. Just be prepared for like an hour and a half podcast, because he's gotten that talk down to a tight 90 minutes, people. And I can honestly say since then, like I said, I haven't looked back. It has never been a regret. I've never wondered if I made the right decision. There have been times it's been hard. It's not easy. And I think sometimes, and this is again, just the era that I had the gospel presented to me in, was shared very much as a Jesus can fix your problems kind of gospel. Right at the start of the purpose-driven era, which we as millennials have come to find out that the gospel, the gospel of our generation, Craig, I like to think you and I are the same generation, millennial, is the purpose-driven gospel. That is that God gives us purpose so that we can give his gospel glory. And that is not the case. The gospel is independent of any purpose we are given. Yes. It is not about you and I. It is about who Jesus is and what he's done.
Yes.
And so I have gone through that, and I have struggled at times with purpose. And it wasn't until about 2018 that I realized that all of my striving, even inside of that, like trying to find purpose, is irrelevant. It's all about the cross. It's all about who Jesus is and what he has done. And while he does not promise that anything we go through after accepting his lordship over our life, he doesn't promise any of that will get easier. He doesn't make pain or suffering go away. He doesn't make bad things stop. What he does do is give it meaning, and it gives it completion. Because at the end, when we move on to the next plane, it's going to be about, what did you do with the message that I gave you to give other people? Did you share that hope? It's like, well, yeah, I had X amount of followers. Irrelevant how many followers you had. Well, but I look at all the mission trips I went on. Irrelevant. It's, what did you do with the hope that was given to you? And that's kind of my testimony, is that's what I'm trying to live out more now. Is it's not a ram the gospel down your throat gospel like it used to be. I think people today are much more suspicious of someone who's going to try to be, can I talk to you about Jesus? And would much rather have you be in a relationship with them before you start trying to proselytize to them. I know it sounds bad to say, like, there is some truth to the, like, preach the gospel at all times and when necessary use words. No. You need to use both. Yeah. It is both. Yeah. It's not one or the other.
If you never use words, then they'll never hear.
But also, you can't claim a gospel that you're not living out yourself.
Exactly.
If you are not showing the love of Jesus, if you are just condemning and, judging, it is not my place to judge an unbeliever, because an unbeliever is going to unbelieve.
Exactly.
But if there is judgment to be had, it is going to be between believers. If Craig is sitting here and, I don't know, like trafficking illegal drugs and saying he's a Christian, I'm going to have words with him and be like, that's not what Jesus says. But if you didn't know Jesus and you were trafficking drugs, you don't know any better. I mean, you should.
You should still know better.
But the idea is like, there's no conviction of your conscience.
Yes.
And I think that with believers, where we are at, this is more of a criticism of the American church. We're real quick to judge other people without looking at ourselves. We need to turn to Jesus first, allow him to rule our conversations before we start trying to rule the conversations of others. So that's kind of my testimony. It's this roundabout, like, I have always been spiritually tuned. I always will chase after Jesus, and I will always hope that when you talk to me, you leave the conversation at the very least as saying to yourself, there's something different there. So that, I think, would be my testimony, is that there's something different.
Yeah, I appreciate that from knowing you for a few years now and being friends for a couple of those years now, as I've gotten to know you and spend more time with you, and the jokes that have come up with nicknames we have for you now, like Prophet Joe.
No, I hate that.
But even,
please preface that for the listener by saying our church gave us a spiritual gifts assessment, and it was one of the branded ones, and one of the results you could get was prophet. And I hated it. I've never been comfortable with it. And then yet somehow that makes people go, exactly, you shouldn't be. And that's why it's good you have that gift. And I'm like, that's not helping, Craig.
But even hearing from, like, that is so obvious in you, even from a young age, the things you're saying is like, when you see things in the church and you question them and you call them out like a prophet does. And like, it's not being prophetic in the way of like seeing the future.
Yeah, no.
Seeing even now and seeing even then things that are rough spots and bringing light to them. Like, I've seen that probably since our even first conversation, and having you in my life, and listeners, I encourage you in your life, like, surround yourself with people that can speak truth and love and all of that wrapped up. And one that, might pick the saint that is.
I'm a performer by nature. So that's why I went with Saint Cecilia. Which,
like, having people like that in your life is so encouraging, and ones that will then encourage you to have friends that, as we were discussing before, may not be believers, that might have different expectations on your life. Like, that's super encouraging, instead of being held up in the church or being held up in our own controlled space. It's so encouraging to have people out in the world. And so, you're a man of many jobs, and I love hearing it, because you get to be a man that does many things, interacting with many people from different walks of life. And that's so encouraging, because we in our Christian bubble, especially our American church,
the worst
Christian bubble,
the worst thing an American Christian can do is move out to the rural country. Like, that's the worst thing you can do as an American Christian. That's not where the people are. The people are in the metro areas. I know there are some people more suited to farm life. I am not one of them. I am a city creature. I love that I get to work in downtown Chicago. I wear my I Believe hat, which, quick shout out to Joe Hendry. I wear my I Believe hat. And people, I actually had this conversation on a train. Someone just recently asked me, I was like, what do you believe? So I believe in Jesus. And they're like, oh, well, that's a hot take. I'm like, no, I don't think it's not a hot take. He's been around for a few thousand years now. It's actually quite standard take, I would think. Right. And we had just a brief interaction in which I didn't necessarily share the gospel, but when they left and they said that the conversation was more productive than any other conversation they've had with a Christian before, that is alternately very heartening, but excruciatingly disheartening at the same time. That if the most productive conversation they've had with someone about Jesus was one that didn't devolve into yelling, that's not a good sign.
Right. But that's just another encouraging reflection of your story and who you are, that we can all be encouraged. It's like you're willing to have simple conversations by just a simple article of clothing on your head. Like, we can all make that difference. We can all be that person. We can all be that person that disagrees with our family as you do about faith, but love and take care of them. Like, hearing your heart for your dad always encourages me, because I have such a great heart for my father as well. My earthly father, obviously, as well.
Yeah. Theological, blah, 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 blah. Here's the footnote.
But having those small conversations, just caring for people, is so important, and I feel like lost today, because church or not, like, we have to be right. And
that's the frustrating thing. Like, if you have to fight to be right, that's not good for your pride and ego. Because here's the thing. Jesus needs no defending.
Yep.
Jesus he needs defending. Yeah, here's the theological footnote. What I mean is, we don't need to strive against a culture that is always going to be against, Christianity and what we stand for. The church, the gospel of Jesus Christ survived actual persecution. And I'm sure actual persecution will come again. But in this current moment, as we sit in your living room in 2024, we are not in a season of persecution. We are not even in a season of mild persecution. Right. People just don't like Christians. Yep. But that's not, I don't think it's necessarily because of Jesus. I think it's because of Christians. Yeah. So, well-earned dislike, it would be what I would say. And it's because as Christians, we're expecting unbelievers to act in a believing manner, and it's not going to work. That's just not. It's because think about it like this. Look at it from the reverse angle. Is someone going to change your mind through, the difference is you and I have actual truth.
Yes.
They have what they think is the truth. Yes. They if you talk to a lot of believers, I think, I kind of believe. If you ask me, I believe in Jesus Christ. 100%. It's not even a hesitation. And when we kind of come at people with that antagonism, it's not drawing people in. We're not winning people to Christ. We are winning arguments for Christ. And I don't know if that's 100% what we're called to. No. I'm a dude with moderate access in my mind to Bible knowledge, but I would say that Paul was the great reasoner. I am much more Peter. I would rather just party with people and show them Jesus rather than logic them into Jesus.
Right.
That's my hot take. Is Peter was the partier, and that's why we are. He's my spirit apostle.
He's now your patron.
He is now my patron. Yes, he's my patron. There's the Catholic.
There you go. Catholic. Joe, thank you so much for recording now 2 of these, and then giving us great ideas for 2 or 3 more in the future.
And they're all about my family, so I can't wait.
Thank you for sharing this time with us. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for living a life that is, as you referenced in your story, for him, 100% for him. That moment that you said that when you were 19, about to be 20, as you said, that radically changed your life.
I've never looked back, and it's never been a regret. And man, I just hope I'm doing better than I did yesterday.
That's amen. Amen. So thank you for all of that, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And audience, thank you as always for listening. I couldn't do this without you.